Boston, December 1919. One night, one desk, one pen. Harry Frazee signed. He knew what he was signing, but he didn't know what he was starting. Nobody knew. Snow was falling on Boston that night. It was quiet, and inside that quiet, as the ink dried on that signature, something began. Something nobody noticed, but something that would be felt for 86 years. What did the Red Sox lose that night? To understand that, you first need to understand what Harry Frazee wanted to buy, and what that thing cost, and why that cost, that specific, absurd, historically catastrophic cost, became the most painful footnote in the history of American sport. Harry Frazee was not a baseball man. He was a theater man. A Broadway producer who had purchased the Boston Red Sox in 1916, not because he loved baseball, but because he loved the idea of owning something. The Red Sox were valuable, were successful, were the defending champions when Frazee bought them, and were the kind of asset that successful men bought when they wanted the world to understand they had arrived. Frazee arrived, bought the team, and then proceeded to manage it the way theater producers manage theater, with an eye toward the short term, toward the immediate cash need, toward what could be sold to fund what needed to be funded right now. Baseball teams require patience, require investment, require the willingness to hold on to assets even when holding is uncomfortable, because the value of certain assets is realized over time rather than immediately. Frazee did not have patience. Frazee had a show he wanted to produce, a show that needed money, and sitting in his Red Sox roster, worth more money than anything else in his possession, was Babe Ruth. Ruth in 1919 was 24 years old and had just hit 29 home runs, a record. The previous record had been 16. Ruth had not just broken it, he had shattered it, in a way that suggested the record itself had been wrong about what was possible. He had done it while also pitching 9 games and posting a 9-5 record. He was not yet what he would become. Not yet the Sultan of SWAT. Not yet the man with 60 home runs. Not yet the central figure of a dynasty that would define professional baseball for 15 years. But he was already undeniably the most valuable player in the American League, possibly in all of baseball. Frazee knew this. The Yankees knew this. And the Yankees wanted him. The negotiation between Frazee and the Yankees happened quickly. Too quickly for something of this magnitude. Colonel Jacob Ruppert, the Yankees owner, had been trying to acquire Ruth for months, had been told no, had waited, had tried again. And then Frazee's financial situation changed in the way that financial situations change when a theater production has not performed the way its producer hoped, and the debts that productions generate are coming due faster than the productions are generating returns. Frazee needed money. He needed it in a specific amount and in a specific time frame. And Ruppert, who had been waiting, made an offer. $100,000, the largest sum ever paid for a baseball player to that point. More than 3 times what Frazee had paid for the entire Red Sox franchise 3 years earlier. Plus a $100,000 loan secured against Fenway Park itself. Frazee took it. That night in December, with the snow falling and the city of Boston sleeping without any idea what was being decided in a room somewhere above them, Frazee signed the papers that sent Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees. What Ruth felt when he learned about the trade has been described variously by the people who were around him. What is consistent across the accounts is that he was not surprised the way that someone is surprised by something they couldn't have imagined. He was surprised the way that someone is surprised by something they had feared might happen. There had been contract disputes with the Red Sox, disagreements about money and about what Ruth believed he was worth, and what the organization believed it could afford. Ruth had held out, had demanded more, had been told that his demands were unreasonable. And now he was going to New York, where the money was different, where the stage was larger, where what Ruth was would be understood and accommodated in ways that Boston had not fully managed. He went. He was Babe Ruth. He went where they sent him and made wherever they sent him into the place where things happened. The Yankees in 1920 finished 3rd. But Ruth hit 54 home runs. 54 in a single season. The record he had set the previous year, the record that had seemed impossible when he set it, was not just broken. It was made to look like a misunderstanding of what was possible. The entire American League that year hit 369 home runs combined. Ruth hit 54 of them alone. He was 14% of all the home runs hit in the American League by himself. This is not a statistic. It is a description of something that had never happened in professional sport before. One man doing something at a level so far beyond everyone else doing the same thing that the comparisons stopped making sense. And it was happening in New York, in the uniform that Boston had sent him away in front of crowds that Boston would not see because Boston was finishing fifth. The Red Sox finished fifth in 1920, finished fifth in 1922, finished last in 1923. The players who had surrounded Ruth, the players who had been sold and traded away in the years after the Ruth deal, because Frazee continued to sell assets to fund his Broadway productions, were gone. The team that had won the World Series in 1918 was dismantled piece by piece until what remained was unrecognizable as the same franchise. The Yankees, meanwhile, were building, were acquiring, were spending the money that Ruth was generating at the gate and winning with the talent that Ruth was attracting to New York. In 1923, the Yankees opened Yankee Stadium. Ruth hit a home run on opening day. The stadium was called the House That Ruth Built. The house that Ruth built was built with Boston's foundation, with the player that Boston had sold for $100,000, and a Broadway show. The show was called No No Nanette. It did not open until 1925. It ran for 321 performances on Broadway. It was a modest success. It was not the success that justified what Frazee had traded for it. Nothing could have justified what Frazee had traded for it. But Frazee had not been thinking about what history would say. Frazee had been thinking about the debt that was due, and the production that needed funding, and the $100,000 that would solve both problems immediately. He was thinking short. Baseball requires thinking long, and the cost of thinking short in December 1919 was paid not by Frazee, but by every Red Sox fan who came after him. Every fan who sat in Fenway Park in 1946 and watched the Red Sox lose the World Series in 7 games. In 1967, in 1975, in 1986. Every October that arrived with hope and ended with the specific heartbreak of a team that could not complete what it started. The Curse of the Bambino, named after Ruth, blamed on Frazee, paid for by Boston. Subscribe right now if you've ever watched someone make a decision that cost everyone around them for decades. Hit like if you think the curse was real, and drop a comment. Do you believe in the Curse of the Bambino? Because what happened in 2004 when Boston finally broke it tells you everything about what it meant. Ruth never spoke extensively about leaving Boston. He spoke about New York, about what New York was, about the scale of it, about the way the city received him, and what it meant to play in a stadium built for him, and crowds that came in numbers that Boston couldn't match. He was not sentimental about Boston, was not the kind of man who dwelled in what had been, when what was happening right now was extraordinary. And what was happening right now, for 15 years in New York, was extraordinary in ways that made dwelling in the past a waste of the present. He hit 60 home runs in 1927, won 4 World Series championships, built the career that the numbers only partially describe, left a record, 714 home runs, that stood for nearly 40 years. And every home run he hit in Yankee Stadium was a home run that Boston had decided it couldn't afford to keep. The Yankees won the World Series in 1923, and 1927, and 1928, and 1932, 4 times in the decade after Ruth arrived. The Red Sox won it 0 times, would win it 0 times until 2004. 86 years, 4 generations of fans who grew up loving a team that could not complete October. who learned to love baseball through the specific education of a franchise that knew how to get close and had not, since December 1919, known how to get there. The curse was not literally a curse, was not the supernatural consequence of a transaction. It was the natural consequence of losing the best player in baseball and never replacing him with anything equivalent. It was what happens when a team sells its foundation and tries to build on what remains. The foundation holds for a while, then it doesn't, and Boston, which had been a franchise built on Ruth, discovered what it was without him. It was good, occasionally great, never great enough, not for 86 years. Harry Frazee sold the Red Sox in 1923, moved on to other productions, other deals, other transactions where the short-term need outweighed the long-term consequence. He died in 1929 at the age of 48. He did not live to see the full extent of what the transaction had produced. Did not live to see Ruth win 4 championships in New York, while Boston finished last. Did not live to see the curse become legend. Did not sit in Fenway Park in 1986 and watch Mookie Wilson's ground ball go through Bill Buckner's legs, and understand in that moment that what happened in December 1919 was still happening, still collecting, still presenting its accounting in October after October after October. The ink had been dry for 67 years. The cost was still being paid. $100,000. One signature. One Broadway show. And 86 years of Boston waiting for something that Frazee had decided, on a December night with snow falling, he couldn't afford to keep.